The winds of famine howled across Canaan, carrying the cries of starving children and the desperation of a father with no choice left. Jacob, frail and weary, looked into the eyes of his sons. Benjamin, his youngest, his last link to Rachel, stood before him. "Take him," Jacob whispered, his voice breaking. "Go to Egypt, buy food, but if harm befalls him, you will bring my gray hairs down to the grave." The brothers nodded solemnly. They had lost Joseph. They had lost Simeon. They could not bear to lose another. With heavy hearts, they departed for Egypt once more. When they arrived at Joseph's palace, they were immediately led inside. Their stomachs churned with unease. Why had the ruler summoned them instead of sending them straight to buy grain? Joseph stood at the top of the marble steps, watching them approach. His eyes lingered on Benjamin. The boy was no longer a boy. He was a man now. Joseph's only full-blooded brother, the one who had never betrayed him. Joseph turned to his steward. "Take them to my house. Prepare a feast. They will dine with me today." The brothers froze. Dine with him? A Hebrew slave-turned-ruler was inviting them into his house? This had to be a trap. Judah stepped forward, his voice trembling. "My lord, we do not know why we have been brought here, but we must confess. When we opened our sacks last time, we found our silver inside. We did not steal it. We do not know how it got there." Joseph's steward waved a hand. "Peace be with you. Your Yahweh must have put treasure in your sacks. Your debt has been paid." And then Simeon appeared, their brother, alive. The tension cracked, replaced by a flood of relief. They embraced him, whispering words of reunion and apology. But there was no time for questions. They were ushered inside. Then Joseph entered the room, their host, their judge, their own brother, whom they still did not recognize. He looked directly at Benjamin. "Is this your youngest brother?" he asked softly. Benjamin nodded, unsure. Joseph swallowed hard. His eyes burned. His throat tightened. "May Yahweh be gracious to you, my son," he whispered. And then he turned away, quickly, before they could see the tears spill down his face. He fled to another room, collapsed against the wall, and wept. For years he had buried his pain. For years he had hidden his heart. But now it was breaking. He was looking into the face of his own blood. It took him time to regain himself. When he returned, he ordered the feast to begin. Plates overflowed with food. Wine filled their cups. And yet Joseph's mind was far away. He had one final test for them. The next morning, as the brothers prepared to leave, Joseph gave a quiet command to his steward. "Fill their sacks with grain, and place my silver cup inside the sack of Benjamin." The brothers rode away, smiling for the first time in weeks. They had their food. They had their freedom. Benjamin was safe. Then the sound of hooves. Soldiers surrounded them. Swords glinted in the sun. "Halt!" the captain bellowed. "Why have you repaid kindness with evil? Why have you stolen our master's silver cup?" The brothers' hearts stopped. "Stolen?" Judah gasped. "We would never! Search our bags. If any of us have it, let him die, and the rest of us will be your slaves." One by one, the sacks were opened. Nothing, 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 until the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Silence. Then, a cry of pure agony. Judah fell to his knees. "No!" he gasped, his hands clutched at his head. "No, this is a mistake!" But the guards had already seized Benjamin. His fate was sealed. The brothers were dragged back to Joseph's palace, their spirits shattered. Joseph stood before them once more, his face unreadable. "Benjamin will stay here as my slave. The rest of you, go home in peace to your father." And then, Judah did something unexpected. He stepped forward. His voice, hoarse and filled with desperation, echoed through the grand chamber. "My lord, I cannot go back without him. My father's heart is bound to this boy. If we return without him, he will die." Tears welled in his eyes. The same Judah who once led the charge to sell Joseph into slavery now begged for his brother's life. "Take me instead," Judah cried. "Let me stay in his place. I will be your slave, but let the boy go free." Joseph could not take it anymore. His chest heaved. His vision blurred. The dam inside him broke. "Leave us!" he roared to his servants. The guards hurried out, closing the doors behind them. Joseph turned back to his brothers. His breath shook. His hands trembled. He could no longer hide. Tears streamed down his face as he took a step forward, and then another, and another, until he stood right before them. "I am Joseph." The brothers froze. Their world shattered. The blood drained from their faces. They could not speak. They could not breathe. Joseph, the ruler of Egypt, the brother they had betrayed, the brother they had sold. Joseph saw their terror. They thought he would kill them, but instead, he wept. "You sold me into slavery," he said, his voice breaking. "But do not be afraid. Yahweh sent me ahead of you to save your lives." He stepped closer, his heart open, unguarded. "It was not you who sent me here, but Yahweh. He made me a ruler in Egypt so that I could save you all." And then, in an instant, the weight of years was lifted. The brothers collapsed into Joseph's embrace. Tears soaked their robes. Sobs filled the palace. They had lost a brother. Now they had found him again. Joseph pulled away, wiping his eyes. "Go home. Tell our father that I am alive. Bring him here. Bring everything you have. You will live in Egypt, and you will never hunger again." The brothers, still trembling, still reeling from the impossible, nodded. And miles away, an old man sat in Canaan, believing his son was dead. But soon he would see with his own eyes Joseph was alive, and the family that had been broken would be whole once more.